Welcome to Learning Life Skills Together. This is our weekly community Zoom meeting where our guests help us to go deeper into the 4 life skills and open up a huge array of chances to practice them. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Learning Life Skills Together weekly Zoom meeting number 28. And we have with us today our digital wellness expert, Francesca Boomsma, who has been with us before, and we had a good time there. We're going to explore some of the same territory and some new territory that's opened up by the fact of it being summer at the moment. So I'm going to ask Francesca to help us begin by bringing us into the present moment through a little practice. So Francesca, you're on.
All right. Thank you, Don, and thank you to everyone for listening and for having me back. As Don suggested, we'll just get started with the conversation with a short mindfulness practice. So wherever you are, ever you're listening to this, just take a moment to pause and we'll begin the practice together here and now. So taking some deep inhales and exhales, we can begin to ground ourselves in this moment, pausing from whatever we were doing before our busy lives and just being here with the present moment. Using the breath to connect us. Feeling the rise and fall of the shoulders as the breath moves through the body. And just appreciating for a moment the stillness and the silence here. And once we've found ourselves grounded in this present moment, if we can, we may form an intention to be present and open to this upcoming conversation today, bringing a kind, curious, and non-judgmental attitude to whatever arises. Reminding ourselves that as parents and as humans, we do the best we can with the tools that we have at hand. And we open up to the feeling of empowerment that we might increase in our capability and skill as parents. Opening ourselves to this conversation with a practical and hopeful approach. And just closing this short meditation with some more deep grounding breaths. Okay, and thank you for joining along with that. I'll hand it back to Don for now.
Okay, well, thank you. And I am more present here now after doing that. And so that idea of doing the best you can with the tools that you have is really, a theme for us learning life skills together. This is what we have to work with. And we just worked with a lot of the tools that we have, I want to say. So, right now we're sort of thinking about the emotion regulation part of things. That's our second big skill. And so there's lots of ways of working with our emotions. One of them being, hey, pause and take a few deep breaths, right?
Yeah.
So we did that. We touched into that already and grounding ourselves, feeling this moment, feeling gravity holding us in our chair, maybe something like that. Really simple tools to use to get us to um, a workable place, which is really, this, okay, I'm ready to engage. I'm ready to have the conversation now. So just that pause is really useful for me and great for everybody to practice just over and over again. I mean, this is
Sure.
this is this is the key, right? Is we can know about these things, but to actually do them is something else again. So yeah. So as I was saying when I started, we have this sort of added attraction and added tool, if you will, of it being summer. And there being more freedom for the kids, maybe a little more freedom for the adults as well. And opportunities to be outside and to sort of have some adventures that we might not undertake, in the fall and winter and in the school times, you know. So so this is one of the reasons that I wanted to talk with you, Francesca, is just this idea of when we're locked up in the house or or feeling like we need to be in one place because of the way the weather is and our schedules are running and all this kind of stuff, we're more drawn to the digital world. And maybe there's a relief from it or a release from it as summer comes on. Hey, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree that there seems to be this natural kind of shift once the weather warms to wanting to be outside and to engage in more free play, get off of our devices. So, for us parents, it could be a great time and a perfect opportunity to invite our kids and our families to do that. So, hopefully, we can review some of those ways today together. Um, but
Yeah,
yes, I agree.
I would love to just think that through with you. I'm thinking that, our sort of digital use can shrink naturally rather than through some sort of disciplinary something. You must do this now and don't do that for that time period. All that sort of stuff not necessary when we have the appeal of the other things that we can be doing.
Exactly. It can be a breath of fresh air, not only for kids, but for parents who might spend a lot of time and energy doing that kind of disciplinary, let me get you off your device, let me set
Yeah,
these rules. So, reframing it and shifting ourselves out of that state, allowing ourselves to just say, hey, here's the opportunity, get outside. It's really, I think, a perfect antidote to the negative impacts of, all of our
yeah,
device addiction.
yeah. And so one of the things that you mentioned was play. And so, you know, I wonder how many of us go immediately to games, video games, all that kind of stuff when we think of play.
Mm,
And we
mm-hmm,
and we don't necessarily think of other forms of play, you know,
mm-hmm,
just as being available to us. So what is, when we talk about free play, when we talk about getting outside, what are some of the things that we mean by that? What are some of
mm.
what are some of the
Yeah,
things
so
we
I
might
guess
encourage?
a nice way to think of it could be like imagining what our grandparents and great grandparents engaged with as play before we had this complete transformation of tech and devices. What were our grandparents doing to entertain themselves and to learn
Yeah.
about the world? So when we refer to free play, what we're talking about is this kind of unstructured, voluntary, mostly child initiated activity,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
exploratory, all about discovering, getting out in the world and doing things. That's where the learning really happens. And unfortunately, but understandably, we've shifted away from this, not only because of the tech transformation, but because the world does present itself as a more dangerous place these days. So, as parents, we do have that quality of wanting to keep our kids safe, but we can try and hold that in balance and learn to allow our kids to let go, to explore, to let go of this kind of safetyism, right? Which is this idea of kids playing together without parents' rules, allowing that to happen again. And it's
Yeah.
simple, but it's not so easy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just hard to get people together, and so, families used to supply that, you know. I am a grandparent, at least the right age. And so when I played with my cousins and my, neighbors next door on either side and maybe up the street. And we were just outside and we made stuff up to do. We
Mm,
played all the variations of baseball and all the variations of football that you can play with four kids or
hmm.
six kids or whatever it is, you
That's
know.
exactly what we're
And
talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
going out in the world and trying things. You know, you make a friend and they reject you. What do you learn from that? You build a tower and the tower falls. What do you learn from that? You know, you
yeah.
propose a game to a group of kids and they don't want to. What are you learning from that?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And so it is that direct kind of learning that's so important for our kids and that they sort of get shielded from in many ways.
Mm,
As they sort of stay inside and do things online, those encounters are not the same, right?
they're
That's
not
that's
the
one of the
same.
things that really strikes me is
Mm,
that it's really person to person, face to face. You say different things than you would online.
hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Not
yeah,
just that social interaction of face to face, but a really fundamental part of growth and development is having this feeling of some risk involved in your learning experience, perhaps even a risk of getting hurt and not necessarily getting hurt physically, but building resilience, which is the idea of bouncing
yeah,
back from adversity. And again, as parents, we don't want that to happen because we want to keep our kids safe. But it's very important to allow kids to learn independently. What is the risk involved? How can I experiment with it? What am I learning from it?
yeah, yeah. So not should I climb that high up that tree so much as, should I suggest this to the group even and risk the rejection of that? Yeah, yeah. I definitely hear what you're saying about that.
And
Yeah.
I'm not a total, let's see, what's the word? I don't hate video games or hate,
Right.
online kind of digital based games, but typically in those games, especially when you have like a single player kind of experience, the risk is taken by the players. So you're not even learning that
Right.
kind
It's not
of,
you. Yeah.
yeah, in
Yeah. The
this kind of made up
repercussions are not
world.
big. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So really what we're talking about here is just balancing that. Like we said in the beginning, not necessarily bringing down the like rule of law and saying we can't be on our devices, but balancing that now that it's the summer and that it's nice weather with this opposite kind of idea, which is free play.
Hmm.
We kind of touched on it before, but the old fashioned play date is such a
Right.
great tool to utilize.
Right.
It's hard nowadays living far from, neighbors. We do tend to live like more isolated experiences. So we have to go out of our way to plan time, to socialize, to be together. So that could be a great way for parents to start putting together a plan for the summer is organize play dates. And if it's a matter of time and resources for parents, organizing that chain of your in your community of, okay, this
Yeah.
neighbor this day gets this play date, this friend
Yeah.
this day gets this play date, and just passing the kids along. Because of course we have to consider our resources available as a parent.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And so building a little community or building up the community that's there. And yeah. So working with those networks that we already have, such as neighbors, that kind of thing, but also the family. I mean, as I said,
Mm,
I played a lot with my cousins.
yeah.
You know, that was a thing. They were like first friends, for the
Hmm.
for the smaller kids. It's like, okay, well, we all know each other really well. We're in this
Yeah.
family
And
thing.
actually, Don,
So
that's
go
some of
after
the
it.
best, yeah, that's one of the best kinds of groups we can find ourselves in free play is that kind of mixed age,
Yeah.
imaginatory experience where, you're making the rules, but again, there's some risk of getting hurt. But you learn so much when you are in this kind of mixed age experience, looking up to the older kids and then helping the younger kids.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, there's games and then there's exploring your world, which is another thing um that is really much more open and frankly a little more safe in the summer, to go down to the creek or go to the pond. And I mean, I grew up in Chester County, and so there are
Mm,
lots of creeks and lots of ponds and lots of, we're blessed with so many parks and, you know, property that's been set aside for use just of exploring and seeing what's there and seeing the animals and the plants and the whole deal and getting to know, you know what our reality is, what the place we live is. It's
mhm,
one of the things that I find interesting when I do a lot with little kids, and I do a lot with libraries and books and that kind of stuff. And a lot of that is around animals that we don't actually have here.
mm,
So, so there's the occasional book or movie about a squirrel, but when you live here, when you live in Pennsylvania, you've got particular animals that are here all the time and very present, and we don't tend to just spend the time and watch them and see what
mm,
they're up to. Whether it be the squirrel or the flock of starlings that comes in or the red-winged blackbirds in the weeds along the creek, with their amazing cries. We don't, I don't think, necessarily just get that into us without being out and about with our eyes wide open.
mm,
you know and so one of the things that have been thinking about as we were getting ready to do this talk is the fact that there are actually things online that are useful in that way. There are things like iNature or the Cornell birding apps, which are, scientifically amazing. There's lots that you can learn, and that it's useful when you're walking along. So
Mm,
you hear a bird singing and you don't know what it is, which is the case a lot of times because we really don't know
mm,
our birds, you know?
mm-hmm,
And so there's an app where what you do is it listens to the birds and it tells you which is which, and then you can go look up the bird and see what it's all about and see why
mm-hmm,
you're hearing it there. Oh, this is a bird that loves to be in trees, or this is a bird like the blackbird, that a red-winged blackbird that loves to be in marshy wet land, and so suddenly your world comes together. And yes, it's been helped by the digital world, but at the same time, what you're learning is something that's really deep, that's from you know as you said, our great grandparents would know these things,
mm,
sort of automatically. Oh, of course, that's a red-winged blackbird's call. I know what that is. I've heard it a million times. And I'm walking by the creek. Obviously, that's what I'm going to hear. So it's not that we have to, push everything out. It's that we can use some of the resources that we have to enhance our exploration and our play.
yeah, which is essentially what technology and our devices are supposed to do, right? Enhance our
Hmm.
experience. So
Yeah.
not only can we enhance our experience, but we can give as example to our kids that we can use our devices in a setting like nature, and they can work together to create a very cool experience of discovery.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can sort of share it too. So it's not like it's like one person has to look it up. We don't all have to do that too.
Mm, yeah.
So it sort of spins on that whole, let's be together, let's be, this group of friends walking down by the creek or whatever it happens to be. You know, it's really, just such a great moment, as school releases everyone, you
Hmm.
know, and the rules change a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
and I think typically our attitudes toward our devices change. Again, like we discussed, we tend to see it more as an experience blocker throughout the year. Our phones don't allow us to spend as much time with family, friends. We're not involved with books or our hobbies. It affects our sleep health. But in this way that you're just describing, it can really be an experience enhancer. And so we're shifting that attitude towards our devices,
yeah,
thereby also just giving ourselves a little space from them and not relying on them as heavily, not becoming that kind of addictive, negative, dependent
yeah.
tendency.
Yeah. So it's kind of like if there were a rule of thumb for digital use in the summer, it's, am I opening up? Is it school's out for summer and here we go into the world, or am I blocking myself off?
Hmm.
What can I do? That choice of enhance or block. I really
Yeah.
like that because it's, our watchword here, simple.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like you can just run that right through your mind in the moment. Is this going to open things up or close things down?
Sure. So you
Yeah.
gave the example of kind of a nature experience, maybe going for a hike or having a picnic along a stream, which again, like you said, is so easy to do in Pennsylvania and Chester County. Another way that we could try and have an experience outdoors during the summer is by creating an obstacle course. And again, this can be used with our devices, right? We can have an
Hmm.
experience with our kids and say, hey, let's get creative. we don't need expensive, toys or anything. We can get some brooms from the closet, some buckets. We can put together an obstacle course. We can look online and think of some ideas. What do we see other people making with obstacle courses? How do we
Hmm.
get creative, but use
Right.
this device as a way for us to play in person together?
Right. Yeah. So we find a model and then we elaborate it.
Hmm.
We build it out from there. Yeah.
But also moving away from just using our devices with free play. Allowing ourselves as parents to kind of use our children as well. I mean, we, are juggling so much as parents. And so chores, everybody's got chores to do. How about framing chores as free play? How can we do gardening or cooking or cleaning up and make that into a kind of fun experience? Obviously, depending on the age group here, but
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, but everybody can help. And that's a really great point is yeah, the smallest kids can do something, and
Mhm.
it's the creativity of, parents and siblings that allow that to happen. Oh, but you could do this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that, sort of drawing everyone in. Yeah. So let's see. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned gardening, and so that's kind of a way of looking at what we're able to do in the time with a little more free time.
Mhm.
It's not, I don't mean literally gardening, but I mean what we're doing is when we're gardening is we're preparing the soil, we're making the space for the plant to grow. And it's the same way with our kids. We don't know how that plant is going to grow exactly. But if it
Mm.
has the space to grow and it has the soil and it sort of, has its fundamental needs fulfilled, it's got enough nutrients and enough water and enough space, we're gonna get something that's really, beautiful. We don't know where the flowers are gonna pop out, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be something. And so we get that opportunity to do that with our kids,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. I
and
like that analogy, a very
yeah,
summer inspired mindfulness
yes,
analogy.
yeah,
But exactly like I think free play sounds like it's a very simple, basic principle, but really it's allowing our kids to develop so much emotional regulation, so much resilience, like we talked about before. The wiring of our child has a huge impact on the rest of our lives. And so it assists in our problem solving. It helps us understand how to get things done. It helps in our self expression and our emotional release. This kind of free
yeah,
play allows us to develop important coping skills and social interactions. But I think also, most importantly, kids with devices don't really get to feel one of the best feelings in the world, which is the feeling of a thrill saying, yes, I tried it. And maybe I failed, but I'm going to come back to it again. And yes, I did it this time. I can do it. I did this.
yeah,
And I think circling back to the conversation of like safetyism with parents, so much of the time we want to do it for them because we
yeah.
don't want to see them struggle. We don't want to see them suffer. And that's okay. I mean, it's understandable. But we need to give our kids that experience because that's how they learn. That's how they feel confident. That's where they learn self esteem, is that skill building within themselves.
Yeah. And this is where the parents' capacity, ability for emotion regulation comes in. It's
Mm,
it's like we're seeing the kid being a little free, and maybe we're worried that it's a little too free.
mm,
And to instead of immediately that little twinge happens, inside you, and you go like, oh, I don't know. And we can pause, just like, you did when we started. Just pause, take a breath, let it give a little more space, right, for that
Mhm.
plant to grow. I mean, obviously, if it's an unsafe thing, you're gonna run right
Yeah, no, we
in. But
use
if
our
but if
best
you're just
judgment
feeling
as
like, oh, I don't
parents.
know, he's never done that before. Oh,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
take a deep breath and a couple steps forward,
Mm,
you
hmm.
and watch what happens, and just try to open up that space for that plant to put out another shoot or to
Yeah.
blossom in another place.
And it is hard. It does take practice, Don. I mean, all of us understand that our busy lives keep us on this kind of
Yeah,
automated, just trudging forward. So it takes those little practices of becoming aware, becoming more mindful and present with what's happening as it's happening. But the best thing we can do, like you said, is pause in those moments where we might have an emotional response. We might want to step in and interrupt whatever's going on. But what happens if we step back, do the opposite,
yeah,
experiment a little bit with what our typical response might be. Um, and we might be
yeah,
surprised by that. And of course, this is
yeah.
all trial and error. You get to experiment
It's
with it
that's
as you
it.
wish as a parent. But
That's it.
I think,
Yeah. What growth might happen for you and your child? Yeah,
mhm.
it's interesting. Cool.
But
Well,
again, I understand that this kind of conversation can be hard for parents with all of the kind of doom and gloom of the rewiring of the generation and how kids are experiencing, and they are difficult
yeah,
negative
yeah,
impacts, depression, anxiety, fragility, all this stuff. But again, going back to our meditation from before, we're doing the best we can with the tools we have. And so we're taking our time learning these
good.
things, incorporating
Yeah.
these into our lives slowly but surely. And we aren't here to change something from day and night, but to see those
Right.
kind of long-term
Right.
effects and to,
Just a
take our
little
time
bit
in recognizing that.
a little bit at a time. And we have our kids for, well, somebody who's old, not that long, but as somebody who knows what it's like to be right down in the middle of it, uh, it's a long time. We can move inch by inch, row by row, as the song about gardening goes, right?
Mm,
So yeah, just a little bit at a time, which is, sort of the whole way that learning life skills is put together. It's 5 minutes, 5 minute um, discussions, learnings, and then put it into practice in a very simple way. Take a pause, take a deep breath, notice how you're feeling and where you're feeling it.
mm,
Those are the important things in life, really. And the things that we're suggesting people do. Go outside, take a walk, take a picnic, you know, go fishing, go look at the birds, go see if there are any frogs in that big puddle across the
mm,
street,
mm-hmm,
because there's stuff everywhere.
mm-hmm,
This is one of the really interesting things about okay, so nature is really coming out strong. It's summer, and man, have I noticed all the stuff that's in bloom and blossoming, here in June. And it's blossoming in between the cracks in the pavement. It's blossoming in the little patch between two buildings.
mm-hmm,
It's not just, oh, I have to go out in the woods to see it.
mm-hmm,
It's walk down the street and you will notice.
mm.
So so
And it's
there's
okay, I think, if as parents, we do get some resistance and some negative feedback at first from our kids who are saying, "Oh my
yeah,
gosh, this is boring," or "Why are you telling me this?" Or "This is," it's just not what they're used to, maybe for the majority of the year. They
yeah.
don't spend this kind of time out in nature. So,
They
you
they
know,
they're not looking for
yeah,
any.
being patient with that and not being hard
Yeah.
on yourself and certainly not taking it personally. Kids will get there. If the first few times you want to go out and have a nature walk and they're totally opposed to that. Whatever, just go with the flow, allow them to uh, see
Yeah,
that maybe it can be something exploratory, fun, useful.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. And there are things to do, that are more, I want to say they're kind of quiet, playful, to sit down on the lawn or in a field and watch the bugs. Uh, I mean, as I say, I spend a lot of time with very small children, and they
mhm,
will, just like me, get very intrigued by what's going on down there,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And then there's something to talk about, and then there's something to come back to,
mhm.
Mm.
And again, like, just speaking from this perspective of knowing like we've got this kind of attention fragmentation with our kids, it might take a little while. Beginning of the summer, when we start, it might be hard. Kids, why am I looking at these bugs? This is so boring. Give me my device and let me just quickly, get
Yeah,
that
yeah.
gratification. But
So take a deep
taking our
breath.
time with it, letting the brain kind of adjust and mold to
Yeah,
that new kind of experience.
yeah. Well, there is a lot to do, and we do have a lot of very simple resources, our eyes and our ears, and the sense of smell,
Hmm.
a big one in the summer, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
and a very pleasurable one. So lots of ways of involving ourselves in nature. As you were saying, lots of ways to invent games or or work around the fact that you can't really have, a game because there's only three of you, and how is that going to work? But you can figure
Hmm.
something out.
Hmm.
And that is great practice for the kids, and just the process of trying to figure that out. No, let's do this.
Hmm.
Okay, all those little pieces of, you know growth, emotionally and intellectually,
Hmm.
come right out. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Not to say that it's easy, as you have brought up, and not to say that it happens fast,
Right.
but it's summer,
It's summer. It
right?
takes
We have
time and
time.
a nice
We
time
have
to slow down
we
and
have
try
time.
new things.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a wonderful note to end this on, that we have the time to try new things. And of course, we always have time to try new things, but it feels particularly likely at this time.
Mm,
So I want to thank you, Francesca, for talking with us and for bringing your wisdom and your perspective from both the mindfulness world and the digital wellness world. So
thank you.
look,
Thank you
look
so much
forward
for
to
having me.
talking with you again, right?
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
and have a great summer to everyone.